Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Nerd Mode On, and today we're actually going to be talking a little bit about Star Wars Battlefront, more specifically talking about the February 23rd, 2016 server update that went into effect. So of course, in this particular episode, we're mainly going to be focusing on the highlighted information. Of course, we're not going to be going through every single bulletin point, but we're definitely going to be focusing on stuff when it comes down to what the player base is looking for, a lot of alterations to the weapons, and overall just the internal fidelity of this particular title. So of course, let's kind of start things off with some general information. Jakku DLC content is being patched into the game. Downloading it separately via platform stores is no longer required and can be deleted from your hard drive at any time. Now, of course, they've actually added in a new map. Now, of course, this is free to the entire community. This is not subject to any of the expansion packs that are going to be coming at a later date. The new map that we got this time around is Twilight on Hoth. Now, of course, they're kind of continuing with the Hoth theme. There's quite a bit of maps, I would say, in Star Wars Battlefront that are on the Hoth map, but of course, it's definitely a very notorious map when it came down to the 5th movie. As well as, I just really enjoy the overall cinematics of it. It definitely allows you to really be enveloped into the Star Wars universe, so of course I'm definitely not opposed to having another Hoth map. Now of course the new map Twilight has been added to all the primary game modes known as Walker Assault, Supremacy, Turning Point, Blast, Fighter Squadron, Drop Zone, and Heroes vs. Villains. It is also worth noting that a new mission has been enabled into Star Wars Battlefront, so of course if you've been looking for some more survival missions and some more survival action with yourself and a friend, then of course the Ice Caves have been added as a due result. Now talking a little bit about Turning Point, in the past Turning Point was only enabled on the Jakku DLC. It was its own little map with its own little game mode, which was really unfortunate considering that I personally find Turning Point to be one of the better game modes in this particular title. However, since myself and much of the community really found Turning Point to be a very complex and really entertaining game mode, they've actually decided to add in all of the previous maps into this game mode. So if you've been definitely wanting to try Turning Point out, but you got really tired of playing the Jakku DLC map on it, now of course you're going to have a little bit more variety. Now of course definitely a really cool feature that I really wasn't expecting, especially since it's kind of Star Wars related, so of course I kind of figured they were going to continue on with the music tracks that are enabled during the gameplay. However, this is definitely a little bit of a surprise if you're somebody that's a content producer on YouTube, or maybe you make videos that are on other sites that have a little bit more strict music policies. But of course, there is now the ability to turn off the music, so of course you're only going to have to worry about the things that are occurring in the game that don't have copyrighted material. So of course, this is definitely really great if you're somebody that creates videos or really enjoys kind of editing and doing this type of stuff. Now of course, transferring over to some weapon-specific alterations, there is a few that I would kind of like to bring up considering that there's some of the most notorious weapons for the Star Wars franchise, as well as there's some that have seen some alterations from their previous changes. The bowcaster explosion damage increased from 10 to 15 per projectile, and explosion radius decreased from 3 to 2.5. So of course the bowcaster in the past has seen a massive alterations to his effectiveness, and it actually became not usable when it came down to how effective it could be. However, DICE kind of realized that they made a ginormous mistake on that, and they've increased the damage to a pretty good spot as well as decreased its blast radius. So ultimately you're just going to have to be a little bit more accurate, but the bowcaster is a lot more usable than it used to be. As well as the bowcaster has also seen its full charge direct hit from 20 to 40 damage per projectile, as well as a normal direct hit increase from 20 to 30 per projectile. So of course, ultimately the bowcaster just seen its damage kind of increase ultimately, and of course that's definitely a good thing if you're somebody that's pretty accurate with the weapon by itself. Now of course, definitely transferring over to one of the more heated topics, the homing shot, which is definitely one of the most controversial things I think added into Star Wars Battlefront. Personally, I find it to be a really cheap way at getting kills, and I was kind of okay with the previous alteration to its lock-on time. However, they have definitely decreased it very slightly, going from 1.5 seconds down to 1.2 seconds. So ultimately, I still don't think the homing shot's going to be a very effective thing anymore. It's not as good as it used to be, which is probably a good thing when it comes down to adding some skill into this particular title. Another very controversial weapon in this particular game is the pulse rifle. Movement speed, however, has been decreased by 30% while moving, so of course it's not going to be as great as it used to be when it comes down to strafing. However, considering that this is a rifle, this really probably won't harm too many people when it comes down to how they play the game ultimately, so of course this isn't really too much of a nerf to its effectiveness. Now, of course, talking a little bit about the Tusken Cycler Rifle, this is definitely a weapon in the beta that was extremely powerful. I would say it was borderline overpowered in some particular cases, but of course, ultimately, it has seen some alterations since the Pulse Rifle is a lot better in a multiple different amount of situations. However, the Tusken Cycler Rifle movement speed while aiming has been increased by 40%. as well as its bullet speed has been increased from 300 meters per second to 450 meters per second. So of course, when it really comes down to it, the Tuscan Cycler rifle is going to be a little bit easier to track moving targets as well as hit targets from a distance, so ultimately it should become a little bit more effective, but I still feel like the Pulse rifle is still the better choice of the two. Now of course, transferring over to some of the vehicle specific changes, we are really only going to be talking about one specific change, which is probably one of the most asked about changes when it comes to Star Wars Battlefront. The A-Wing hitbox size has been increased as a due result of community feedback. So of course, as a due result of this change, the A-Wing is no longer going to be able to dodge a lot of shots that it previously was able to, as well as it's going to be a lot easier for ground targets and air targets to take down A-Wing players. So of course, transferring right along to some general improvements that are talking a little bit about some of the PC specific things, as well as just the overall title by itself. Pre-round timer has been lowered from 30 seconds to 20 seconds, so of course if you're somebody on the PC platform that has a solid state drive, you won't have to wait nearly as long for the game to actually start. Heroes no longer get stuck in stunned animation state, which is definitely something that I've had a big problem with when it came down to the hero battles, considering that it took all of the mobility and all of the control out of your hands and basically put it into this spot where you were just getting mashed by players mashing buttons. So of course this should overall add a little bit more mobility to the game, add some skill and a lot more tactics, so of course ultimately this is all good improvements in my eyes. Princess Leia has been permitted to use her indoor outfit as a due result of the community challenge that we easily succeeded with. Princess Leia's Trooper Bane now only knocks back primary targets, not nearby enemies. Luke Skywalker's Saber Swing hit radius has been reduced from 3 to 2.5 meters. As well as Emperor Palpatine's shock troopers have had their primary weapon damage to better match Leia's Honor Guard primary damage, so of course they're going to be a lot more balanced in terms of their damage outputted. And last but not least, this is a PC specific thing, air vehicle sensitivity has been lowered from 0.9 to 0.45 for easier mouse control. This is previously something that was almost unusable on the PC platform. This should enable newer players that are jumping onto the mouse and keyboard controls to be a little bit more confident when it comes down to being able to navigate the vehicle around the map. But also, if you're already somebody that's very good at flying, this should just make it a little bit more accurate, especially when it comes down to you engaging targets, and ultimately you can make some fine-tunes of yourself by going into the vehicle sensitivity. But anyway guys, that's really all the information when it comes down to the highlighted notes for this particular patch. Definitely a lot of great things. I'm actually really excited to definitely jump back in there and try out some of the new changes that we just talked about. But of course, let me know in the comments below if there's anything you guys feel that should have been changed or anything that's been changed and you would like it to be reverted back to its previous edition. But until the next episode guys, this has been NMO and I'm going to be signing out guys. Peace.